If a woman can't offer you these 5 things, she's not worth it. Not because she's a bad person, but because a relationship without these things is a relationship that will slowly erode your sense of self. Let's stop pretending love is enough. Love is easy. Respect is rare. If she belittles you when she's angry, mocks your dreams, or turns disagreement into disrespect, you're not being loved. You're being controlled. A woman who respects you doesn't always agree with you, but she disagrees without dishonoring you. And then there's emotional safety. You should never feel afraid to speak your truth. You should never feel like your emotions are a liability. If being vulnerable with her means she'll later use your words against you or shut down completely, you're not safe, you're being silenced. The right woman creates space for you to be fully human, not just stoic and strong, but soft and struggling too. Respect is the foundation of every healthy relationship, and yet it's often treated like an optional add-on, something that's nice to have, but not necessary if there's love, attraction, or shared history. That mindset is dangerous. Because the truth is, without respect, love becomes manipulation, attraction becomes control, and history becomes a trap. Respect isn't the reward for good behavior, and it's not something that should be negotiated. It's the baseline, the bare minimum, the very thing that makes a relationship safe, stable, and worth showing up for. When someone respects you, they honor your voice, even when they don't agree with it. They don't talk over you, dismiss you, or mock the way you think. They listen, not just to respond, but to understand. Respect isn't just about words, either. It's shown in tone, in timing, in the patience someone gives you when you're not at your best. It's not performative. It's not a checkbox. It's felt deeply, especially in conflict. Anyone can be respectful when things are going well, but it's during disagreements, disappointments, and emotional turbulence that true respect, or the lack of it, shows itself. In many relationships, respect is conditional. It's given only when the other person is happy, when they're getting what they want, or when you're making life easy for them. The moment you push back, express a need, or show a side of yourself that's messy or inconvenient, the respect vanishes. That's not real love. That's approval disguised as care. You were never being seen, you were being managed. A person who truly respects you won't withdraw their kindness or empathy the moment things get uncomfortable. They don't use your vulnerabilities as weapons or your flaws as ammunition. They hold space for your complexity. They make room for your growth, not demand your perfection. It's easy to fall for someone who showers you with affection, praise, or romantic intensity. But none of that matters if they speak to you with sarcasm when they're upset, roll their eyes when you're serious, or mock the things that are sacred to you. Real respect means you feel safe to be yourself, not just the polished, curated version, but the raw, unfiltered human underneath. If you feel like you have to constantly monitor your tone, shrink your dreams, or silence your truths to keep the peace, you're not in a relationship, you're in a performance. And the reality is, when respect is absent, everything else suffers. Communication breaks down because it's no longer a dialogue, it becomes a power struggle. Trust erodes because you can't count on your partner to honor you when it matters most. Intimacy fades because you no longer feel emotionally safe. Even the smallest disagreements become battles because you're no longer being treated as an equal. You're being treated as an obstacle. That tension, that quiet disrespect, chips away at your self-worth in ways that love alone can't repair. The truth is, respect is what makes love sustainable. It's what makes apology possible, healing mutual, and growth shared. You don't have to agree with someone every day to love them, but you do have to respect them every day if you want that love to last. And if someone can't give you that, if their love only shows up when you're pleasing them, performing for them, or staying silent, then you're not being loved, you're being tolerated, and that's not enough. Because at the end of the day, respect is not a bonus, it's the bare minimum. And any relationship that can't offer it is a relationship that's already failing, no matter how good it looks on the outside. Emotional safety is not a luxury in relationships, it's a necessity. It's the invisible force that determines whether you can truly be yourself with someone, whether you feel seen, heard, and valued, or whether you're constantly monitoring your tone, your feelings, and your words just to avoid setting them off. You can't build anything real with someone if you're afraid of how they'll react when you show your most honest self. Emotional safety isn't about walking on eggshells to avoid conflict. It's about trusting that even in conflict, your heart won't be mishandled. A relationship that lacks emotional safety is one where silence grows louder than words. It's where unspoken tension replaces connection, where vulnerability feels dangerous instead of welcomed. You start to withhold, you edit your truth. You mask your emotions, not because you're dishonest, but because it's been made clear that your full truth is too much, that you'll be punished with distance, sarcasm, criticism, or worse, emotional withdrawal. And that kind of relationship doesn't nourish you, it drains you. Real emotional safety means you don't have to brace yourself before sharing something painful. It means you're not afraid of being shamed for your feelings or mocked for your sensitivity. You're not met with eye rolls, shutdowns, or defensiveness when you express a need. Instead, you're met with presence, curiosity, a willingness to listen without turning your pain into a personal attack. Because when someone values emotional safety, they don't just protect your body, they protect your spirit. Without emotional safety, intimacy becomes a performance. You might still hold hands, kiss, laugh, and share routines, but there's a wall. A subtle but powerful disconnection where the deepest parts of you remain hidden because past experience has taught you that honesty comes at too high a cost. You start pretending you're fine when you're not. You start accommodating instead of communicating. And over time, love begins to feel more like pressure than peace. A partner who creates emotional safety understands that you are more than your reactions. They don't punish you for having a bad day or a triggering moment. They lean in. They ask questions. They remind you that your feelings aren't a burden. That doesn't mean they always agree or get it right. It means they care enough to try. They want to understand not just what you're saying, but what you're feeling beneath the words. That's what emotional maturity looks like. And without it, love quickly becomes unsafe, unpredictable, and unfulfilling. You should never have to hide the most tender parts of yourself to keep a relationship intact. You should never be made to feel weak for needing reassurance or dramatic for needing clarity. And you should never feel like your emotional truth needs to be watered down to protect someone else's ego. Emotional safety allows both people to grow without fear, to evolve without shame, to be wrong without being ridiculed. It's what turns arguments into opportunities for understanding and conflict into connection. The truth is, love can't fully bloom in a space where emotional safety doesn't exist. It may survive for a while, but it will be fragile, anxious, uncertain, and full of overthinking. Real love is not measured by how passionate things feel during the highs, but by how you are treated during the lows. If someone can hold your pain with care, listen when it's hard, and still remain present when you're messy and human, that's safety, and that's priceless. So if you're in a relationship where emotional safety is absent, no amount of attraction, history, or potential will ever make it enough, because at the core of every thriving relationship is this truth: emotional safety is non-negotiable. Without it, nothing else will ever feel secure. It's easy to be there for someone when everything is going well, when the energy is light, when the mood is high, and when life feels like a celebration. But the real measure of someone's presence is how they show up during your low moments. Support during the hard times is not a favor, it's a reflection of true partnership. When you're struggling, grieving, doubting yourself, or moving through chaos, you don't need someone to fix you. You need someone who won't flee, who won't minimize your pain, and who doesn't make your lowest moments about their own discomfort. In the early stages of relationships, many people show up with enthusiasm. They bring their best selves, their charm, their effort. But what happens when life stops being convenient? What happens when you lose your job? When you spiral emotionally, when you're uncertain about everything? That's when you learn what kind of partner you truly have. Do they lean in or do they shut down? Do they offer quiet strength or impatient judgment? Do they remind you of your worth? Or do they act like your struggles are too heavy for them to hold? Support doesn't always look like advice. It doesn't always sound like solutions. Sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is sit with you in your discomfort and say, you don't have to go through this alone. That simple presence, steady, calm, non-demanding, is what makes you feel safe enough to begin healing. If a woman disappears the moment your confidence wavers, if she only loves the version of you that has everything figured out, then that's not love. That's conditional approval wrapped in affection. A supportive partner sees your humanity, not just your highlight reel. She doesn't make you feel guilty for having bad days. She doesn't weaponize your vulnerability or compare your struggle to her convenience. Instead, she asks how she can help. She listens without rushing you to feel better. She doesn't try to fix you to avoid discomfort. She stays because she values connection over control. She knows that your low moments don't define you, and she refuses to let you believe that they do. Some people disappear emotionally even if they're physically present. They go quiet when you need words, distant when you need warmth. But true support means emotional presence. It means being responsive when you reach out. It means remembering the things that hurt you and making an effort not to repeat them. It means noticing when something's off, even when you haven't said a word. That kind of awareness only comes from someone who actually pays attention, not just to your surface, but to your soul. We all want to be strong, but we all have moments when we're not. If your partner only stands beside you when you're performing strength, then you're not in a relationship. You're in a role. Love means being safe to collapse sometimes, to cry, to doubt, to be unsure. And when someone stays, not just physically but emotionally, through those moments, that's when trust is built. That's when love becomes more than romance and starts becoming real intimacy. If she can't be there when you're down, then she doesn't deserve to be there when you rise. A partner who can't handle your storms doesn't deserve your sunshine. Support during low moments isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Because life will not always be easy. You will face fear, loss, failure, and change. The right partner doesn't run from your darkness. They sit with you in it without rushing you into the light. And when you rise again, you remember who stood still beside you when the ground was shaking. That kind of support isn't just rare. It's sacred. Accountability is one of the most underrated signs of emotional maturity in a relationship. It's easy to say, I love you, but the real test is in how someone takes responsibility when they've hurt you, disappointed you, or contributed to a conflict. Accountability is not about perfection. It's about ownership. It's about being willing to say, that was my fault, without deflecting, minimizing, or flipping the script. Without accountability, problems never truly get resolved. They just keep repeating, wearing the relationship down until resentment replaces connection. Blame, on the other hand, is a defense mechanism. It's easier to point fingers than to look inward. It feels safer to say, you made me act that way, instead of admitting, I lost my temper, or I didn't listen. But every time someone chooses blame over accountability, they're choosing their ego over the relationship. They're protecting their pride instead of protecting your bond. And over time, that dynamic creates a relationship where one person always has to be wrong so the other can feel right. That's not a partnership, that's a power imbalance. A woman who values accountability doesn't act like she's always the victim. She doesn't make excuses for her behavior by blaming her past, your tone, or the circumstances. She pauses, reflects, and when she knows she's misstepped, she says so. She doesn't wait for you to beg for an apology or break down from frustration. She takes the initiative because she understands that repair is a responsibility, not a reaction. That kind of accountability builds trust. It tells you that your emotions are valid, that your voice matters, and that your pain is not invisible. But in relationships where blame dominates, the emotional climate becomes toxic. One person always ends up being too sensitive, too emotional, or too dramatic. Every conversation turns into a courtroom where the goal isn't to understand each other, but to win. And what gets lost in that war is the very thing that brought you together in the first place: love, vulnerability, connection. The sad part is that blame often disguises itself as strength. It looks like confidence, but it's really fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of being flawed, fear of not being in control. Accountability requires courage. It takes a strong person to say, I messed up, and an even stronger one to change their behavior afterward. Words matter, but patterns matter more. A sincere apology is a starting point, not the solution. The woman who truly cares about the relationship won't just say sorry to shut you up. She'll reflect on how her actions affect you and take steps to do better. That's growth. That's maturity. That's someone you can build a future with. In contrast, if every conversation ends with you doubting your reality, apologizing for your feelings, or second, guessing your worth, then you're not being held, you're being handled. And no matter how much love exists between two people, if one of them refuses to take responsibility, the relationship becomes lopsided. You'll find yourself carrying the weight of both your emotions and theirs, constantly bending just to avoid breaking. You deserve a partner who sees conflict not as a threat, but as an opportunity to get closer. Someone who doesn't shame you for being hurt, but who leans in to understand why. Someone who values repair over being right. Because at the end of the day, love without accountability is manipulation. It's charming on the surface, but corrosive at the core. Real love says, I see where I went wrong, and I want to make it right. So if she blames more than she reflects, deflects more than she owns, and avoids more than she listens, know that love alone isn't enough. Accountability is the muscle that keeps love strong. Without it, everything else eventually falls apart. Reciprocity is the unspoken rhythm of healthy love. It's not about keeping score or matching each other move for move, but about a natural balance of giving and receiving that makes both people feel seen, valued, and nourished. When love is reciprocal, it flows in both directions, not out of obligation, but out of mutual care. Each person wants to contribute, not just consume. They want to understand, not just be understood. They want to show up, not just be shown off. Without reciprocity, even the most intense love begins to feel hollow, one-sided, and quietly painful. In the beginning, many relationships are full of effort. Compliments are frequent, attention is generous, and affection is abundant. But over time, reciprocity is what sustains that energy. It's what ensures that one person doesn't carry the emotional weight of the relationship while the other simply enjoys the benefits. It's not about grand gestures all the time. It's the small, consistent signs that say, you matter too. When one person is always initiating conversations, making plans, apologizing first, or tending to emotional repair, it creates an imbalance that doesn't just exhaust, it erodes trust. Reciprocity is not about perfection. It's about presence. It's about showing up emotionally, mentally, and physically, not just when it's easy or convenient, but when it counts. A woman who values reciprocity will notice the effort you put in and naturally want to meet you there. Not because she has to, but because she genuinely wants to invest in something that feels meaningful. She will notice when you're tired and offer support. She will appreciate your gestures and return them in her own way. It may not always look the same, but it will feel balanced. One-sided love, on the other hand, is often disguised as romance at first. You give, and she receives. You initiate, and she responds. But over time, that imbalance starts to sting. You begin to feel more like a caretaker than a partner, more like an employee of the relationship than an equal participant. You notice that your needs are acknowledged only when you become quiet or distant, that your love is appreciated most when it's convenient for her. That's not reciprocity, that's extraction. A relationship without reciprocity slowly trains you to believe that asking for your needs to be met is selfish. That wanting the same level of emotional presence, commitment, or attention makes you demanding. But real love doesn't punish you for needing care. It doesn't make you feel like you're too much. It makes room for your humanity just like you've made room for theirs. If you're always adjusting, always compromising, always trying harder just to maintain the connection, then the connection isn't mutual. It's maintained through imbalance. When someone loves with reciprocity, they check in because they care, not because they have to. They notice your energy without being told. They remember the little things, not to impress, but because they were actually paying attention. They want to contribute emotionally, not just receive emotionally. In that kind of love, you don't feel like you're chasing approval or working to earn love. You feel held, you feel met, you feel chosen, not just tolerated. Love without reciprocity turns giving into a burden. It drains rather than fills. It creates a dynamic where one person is emotionally rich and the other is emotionally starving. But love with reciprocity breathes. It's sustainable. It evolves. It invites both people to grow, to give, and to rest. Because the other person will carry them when needed. That's what real partnership looks like. If the energy always flows one way, eventually the relationship will run dry. Because no matter how much you love someone, if they can't love you back with the same depth, intention, and consistency, you're not in a relationship, you're in an emotional transaction. And you deserve more than that. Reciprocity isn't a bonus. It's the heartbeat of healthy love. A relationship built on truth feels different. It feels calm, clear, and grounded, even when things are hard. There's no guessing, no decoding mixed signals, no walking on eggshells trying to figure out what's really going on. You don't have to be a mind reader or a strategist. You just have to be present, honest, and real. When truth is the foundation, love feels like a safe space, not a game you're constantly trying to win. Too often, people enter relationships operating from a place of fear rather than authenticity. Instead of expressing how they feel, they use silence to punish. Instead of stating their needs directly, they manipulate situations to provoke a reaction. Instead of resolving conflict with openness, they play games of withdrawal, guilt, or passive aggression. These tactics might create short-term control, but they destroy long-term trust. A relationship built on tactics is exhausting because you're not connecting with the person. You're constantly navigating around their defenses. When someone can't speak their truth, they usually resort to strategies. They withhold affection to create insecurity. They use intimacy as leverage instead of connection. They avoid hard conversations and instead opt for emotional distance, hoping you'll get the message, without them ever having to say a word. And what that creates is not intimacy, it's anxiety. You start to question yourself. You wonder what you did wrong. You second-guess your feelings. That's not love. That's control disguised as closeness. Truth doesn't always feel comfortable, but it creates clarity. It gives the relationship a solid foundation to grow on. A partner who values truth over tactics will tell you when something is bothering them, not punish you with silence. They'll express their needs directly, not play emotional games. They'll admit when they're wrong, not twist the story until you're the one apologizing. That kind of truth creates emotional safety because you know where you stand. You're not constantly reading between the lines or analyzing tone. You're communicating like two adults who respect each other. A relationship that runs on tactics might look passionate from the outside, but it's unstable underneath. One person is always trying to gain the upper hand. Love becomes a power struggle rather than a partnership. You're rewarded when you behave and punished when you don't. That's not intimacy. That's conditional affection. It teaches you to shift in order to be loved, to suppress your truth so you don't trigger theirs. And slowly, without even noticing, you lose pieces of yourself just to maintain peace. But when truth is prioritized, the relationship becomes a space where both people can be fully themselves. Flaws, fears, and all. There's no need for manipulation because there's mutual trust. There's no need for emotional games because honesty is welcomed, not feared. It doesn't mean there won't be disagreements. It means those disagreements won't turn into emotional minefields. It means you can speak, be heard, and move forward together. Being honest doesn't mean being harsh. It means being real. Saying what you mean, meaning what you say, and showing up with integrity. A partner who values truth won't try to win arguments. They'll try to understand you. They won't use your vulnerabilities against you. They'll protect them. They won't keep you guessing. They'll make it clear this is where I stand, and this is where we are. So if you find yourself in a relationship where truth is replaced by tactics, take a step back. Ask yourself if you're really being loved or just being managed. Because real love doesn't require a strategy. It doesn't demand perfection. It asks only for presence, honesty, and a willingness to grow. A relationship built on truth may not always be easy, but it will always be real. And that's what makes it worth it.